Okay, so as I said, today I'm gonna say something more on PWA, why we think it's a game changer for e-commerce. So I will start with some business motivation, then some features of PWA, and we will go into details of the Vue Storefront, which is open source product created to allow you to create PWA for your e-commerce. So first, the business motivation, why we started this open source project. So being 10 years in the business, like in e-commerce, I can say that customer experience and also developers' experience can be much improved with e-commerce. So if you take a look at the average loading times for the mobile e-commerce, it's typically like 90 seconds over Edge and 2G networks. It's just like 5 seconds less on a 4G network. So you can imagine like how painful it is in some circumstances. So the UX process, the user experience for mobile web, for mobile e-commerce is still far from like seamless process for the users. By the same time, the other statistics, other numbers are saying that 53% of the users are leaving the site after waiting just like 3 seconds. 75 are leaving after 10 seconds. And having this in mind, like the average loading times I presented before, you can say that, okay, so seems like mobile e-commerce is just performing on some really small percentage of its potential. Like it's much to improve there. So why it's so bad? Basically, what I'm hearing when speaking with merchants is typically that, okay, we are pretty good on desktop. It's doing like most of our business. So why to invest huge money into mobile? Is it really true? Like on some markets, especially here in Asia, like even 80% of the users are on mobile, right? In some industries like fashion and the young users is even higher. So I think it should be reconsidered. The second thing, from the technology point of view, when you work with e-commerce, you typically have to work with some, let's say, legacy technologies, like technologies that have like 10 years or even more, like frameworks and other stuff. It's no fun, no longer fun for developers who like to use new technologies, JS and other kind of stuff. So I also hear that it's because of being on the safe side to have the stable technologies, business proven and so forth and so on. Is it also true? It seems like not, because those proven technologies causes the problems. Like 40% of the major e-commerce site had some outages or works significantly lower during the high peaks of the traffic. 56% even were totally outage. So it's a lot to improve on the technical point on the technical side as well. So most of us are using mobile e-commerce, and this number of users is still growing. So it seems like e-commerce demand has outgrown the current tech stack. So the user experience is far bigger than the capabilities of the merchants to deliver the user experience. This is something that was said on the first keynote presentation about the CX, that customer expectation is much higher than the capabilities of the current websites. You can see a lot of news coverage about some major outages. For example, Amazon has huge outage in last 2 months or so after just promo action. So still need to be worked on. Basically, we thought at some point that e-commerce needs new tools to provide to face those challenges. We need new tools. The good news is that those tools are already there, but not so widely adopted. So first thing is headless approach. Not sure if all of you are familiar with this idea of headless. Headless means that you have basically two applications to run e-commerce, or basically any other solutions. So first is the front-end app, which is totally separate from the backend, communicates on some kind of API. So doing headless, you can leverage on the newest and most fancy technologies on the front-end, providing the really cool experience for the users, and still use the proven stable technologies in the backend dealing with transactions, security, and all this kind of stuff. So this meets the expectations of users, developers, and basically can optimize the process by just dividing them. The second tool, maybe set of techniques, we thought it would be cool to provide to the e-commerce developers is design system approach. With design system approach and new set of tools like Adobe XD or Sketch or Figma, you name it, you create kind of design systems. So you create design for particular components named atoms. This is kind of atomic design. So you create the components very similar to the components used by the developers. So the designers and developers can speak on the same level, speak the same language at some point. So it is really great. It's totally different than the previous approach when you are doing just PSD to HTML mostly for the front end. It is really legacy nowadays, So we thought it would be great to provide a set of tools that you can use, the Sketch, Figma, other stuff, export the designs to set of components that are used by your developers. So to make this process, this cooperation more seamless. And the last part of this puzzle is progressive web apps. So progressive web apps are applications like web applications that behaves, looks like, and provides the same user experience like native applications, but still are mobile web. This approach has a lot of the benefits for business and users. And I think that the two key parts here are distribution and user experience. User experience far better on the progressive web apps because they are faster, work even in the offline mode. I will say something more on this later on. But now the distribution part. With PWA, you don't have to put your application into App Store. The statistics say that basically after 3 months of having new device, users are not willing to install any more applications. This is like sad true, but it's true. It's very hard to convince the user, if you are e-commerce, it's very hard to convince the user to install your app just to make shopping or collect some loyalty points or something. It's very hard. So PWA solves this problem. You don't have to be in App Store to provide progressive web applications to your user. You have just URL address. It's indexable by Google. You can redirect user from your website to it and so on. The user experience part of PWA is even more interesting because by providing this standard to your customers, you can create one application supporting all the platforms. I mean iOS, Android, and Windows Web and so on. They are very fast, works offline, and can use some native features of phones like push notifications and other stuff. So this is really great. And even more greater than this is that this is standard which is like 3 years on the market and currently is supported by all the major platform vendors. So Google, Apple, Microsoft, all the devices and operating system and browsers from those vendors support progressive web apps. You can use it just today, starting today. So knowing those things, like having those business motivation and having those two goals to improve the user and developer experience, we created Vue Storefront project. You can find it on GitHub. It's on MIT license, so it's open source and will be open source. We created it along with some other companies from the Magento ecosystem. So currently we have 50 developers. From many different companies, 2 and 7K stars on GitHub, so it's getting pretty popular. Vue Storefront is progressive web app that you can connect to your existing or new Magento website and provide PWA to your users. It's already out of the box. You can just style it out, so the time to market is pretty low. Like I think like it's measured in weeks, not months, like typical e-commerce. What is also cool, you don't have to be familiar with the Magento tech stack. If you are just front-end developers, you can use it, and you can do the e-commerce based on Magento. So it opens this ecosystem to a whole lot new set of developers. Vue Storefront provides all the PWA features out of the box. So we have this full screen optimized to your screen, so it works pretty cool on website, on desktop, on tablets, on Android and iOS phones. You can install it on home screen. This is pretty cool feature of PWA. If you enter the URL of PWA, I will show you URL of our demo in the next slide, so you can just check it in a few seconds. If you enter demo Vue Storefront.io, you will be asked on the Android device if you like to install it on home screen. And after clicking it, you are not downloading anything. It just creates the shortcut, and Vue Storefront in the background synchronize all the products, all the data required to run in the browser local database, so you can use it even without internet connection. You can use also push notifications like normal native applications to send some information to the client. For example, we are using it to remind about the offline orders because it also works offline. This is like something totally new. Before having service workers are part of the PWA specification, you can hardly create something like that. Now you can just download everything like an object version to your browser and use PWAs without internet, like normal native applications. It works on every device, so this is like cool part from the cost point of view. Before that, when you like to have these native apps for your brand, you typically have to create and maintain Android edition, iOS edition, maybe Windows edition, if you were determined. So now you don't have to. You can just create one PWA, and it works on every platform. Like it's one effort, one-time cost. So just to wrap up the features of the PWA, you don't have to install them on the user device, so it's cool because you just having the normal URL user entering. It's searchable, so it's discoverable, so it's indexed by Google. You can even use PWA to improve your Google positions because they are now trying to push everybody to their new mobile first index, which promotes the mobile application. Even desktop websites that have PWA or AMP, another Google standard, so they are optimized for mobile, are higher in the results than the sites that don't have it. PWAs are always up to date. You don't have to update the applications on the user device because it's just websites. So whenever user enters it, we can download the new data feed and it's still up to date. And what is also pretty important, you can use normal Google Analytics or other analytical systems to measure the actions, measure the events, measure everything in your app. Vue Storefront out of the box covers about 99% of the Magento features, Magento standard features. So you can create just your theme for it, and it's ready to go. It works like shopping carts, promotion rules, discount codes, bundle products, configurable products, grouped products, everything works out of the box. So basically, it's very easy to start. We have some users that also integrated Vue Storefront with other platforms, not only with Magento. So there are some cases that users use it with hybrids or with Commerce Cloud or even some custom systems, because we provide a set of APIs. When you comply to this API standard, Vue Storefront will work with your backend. I will say something more on the architecture part. So if you can't wait, you can just enter demo Vue Storefront.io. It will be rather slow at the first visit because our servers are in Paris, France. So, but after that, when it caches all the data in your browser, you see that it's really, really fast. So we have 470 developers in the community. I mean, the Slack channel is really active. If you like to ask some technical questions or have some problems with Storefront, you always can access slack.vuestorefront.io or just visit our website on GitHub. We have more than 25 official partners and companies familiar with this technology and still searching for new partners. So if you are interested in that, it would be great to discuss after the presentation. And the project is getting really popular. Like, it's second most popular Magento repository on GitHub. The first is Magento. And it's 8th most popular e-commerce platform on GitHub in general, like skipping the PrestaShop and other folks. So it's really nice. So now we are getting into some tech details. So first, the architecture. As I said, it's a headless application. So basically, we have this Vue Storefront app. It's Vue.js based JavaScript application that users are interacting with. Then it gets all the data from Vue Storefront API. This is also JavaScript application, but server-side. Works using Node.js. And we are getting all the products, categories, shopping carts, everything from it using the REST API. The cool part is the API adapter is a third layer that connects you to some specific platform. Of course, the Magento is the one we officially support, but users have some different implementations as well. So Vue API adapter is the API adapter that translates Vue Storefront API calls to specific Magento or different platform calls. So you can just switch this element to have Vue Storefront working with other system. And one of the use cases we have pretty often is that some merchant is on Magento 1 and would like to improve the user experience, so they can go with Vue Storefront and then migrate to Magento 2 in the background, like just switching the backend because the data formats and everything will be the same. The last important part is that we are using NoSQL database, Elasticsearch, in our case, to store all the information, to keep it scalable, to keep it really fast. The front-end architecture, the code architecture, is also pretty unique for Vue Storefront because we tried to make it kind of framework. So it's divided into core and the SRC, which is for the user. So in core, you have core components like core checkout component or core product page or add to cart button, these kind of things that contain the business logic. And we always can update the core because users shouldn't modify it. It's similar to how Magento works. So users are creating just the themes, and they also can create the extensions that based on the core, poorly in JavaScript, so it's pretty cool. We also support some PWA-related design techniques. For example, SSR, server-side rendering, which means the code which is used for the generating UI in the browser is also used in the same form, exactly the same code on the server side. So we are generating the markup server side to be indexable by Google and also to optimize the speed. Developers really like Vue Storefront because it's based on JavaScript, so it's pretty modern. And it's pretty easy to start working with. We are based on Vue.js. Vue.js is second most popular JavaScript framework, second to React. But it's far more easier to start working with Vue.js than with React. It supports, for example, themes in HTML, pretty cool feature, especially for developers who were not like JavaScript developers, but rather standard frontends. They can understand how it works very easily. On the server side, we have Node.js and Express framework. We are using Webpack. We are using TypeScript. A lot of cool things. So next few slides are about the developer's experience. We are in the business for more than 1 year. So some guys already made first implementation on Vue Storefront, and here I gave it some feedback from them. I will publish this presentation somewhere after the speech so you can read it afterwards. But basically what they are saying is that it's cool because you can very easily start working with. You don't have to be familiar with Magento, which is problematic for front-end developers because it's, as you know, it's pretty like comprehensive platform. It's very it's pretty heavy. You have to learn a lot of things to start working with. And here you can skip it. You can just focus on front end. So you can even easier find developers to work on the projects. And the third part, the third thing is that you can create the project very, very quickly. Like 1 month is typically good timing for having customized UI without major changes in the feature set. It's pretty good. So first case I would like to present you is the La Nature shop. It's a Russian site. And what is funny, the KT team is an agency from Moscow. Created this site without our knowledge. We were not aware that they're working on that. We just discovered the case study they published on Vue Storefront, which was really funny. It was in Russian. I don't know Russian, so I have to use Google Translate to understand what they did. And then we contact them, and then they said something like, wow, we are generating the websites, like the page views in 100 milliseconds, so in La Nature, loading time is not a problem. I really like this quote. They said something like, it's not a problem anymore. So they integrated it with ERP, they integrated it with CRM. It works on Magento 2.2. Really cool case and really customized UI. When you enter lanature.ru, you can see that it looks totally different than our demo. Like, it's nothing to compare. I double-checked the JavaScript console if it's really Vue Storefront. Yeah, it is, but it looks totally different. The second case was created by our partner from Italy, Bitbull, and they created POC, proof of concept, for Specials brands. It's a shop that sells sneakers mostly. And what is cool, they created it in around 20 working days with 2 developers, but not full-time involved into the project. And what they said, it was really a pleasure to work with this technology because it was so effective. We can get the results so quickly. The last case is from the Hourglass. It's a brand from Singapore. They are just in the final stage of testing, so they will be launching the production page in the next few weeks. They also created this project by themselves, 3 engineers on the merchant side, and it was really cool. They were really happy with the time to market and with extendability of Vue Storefront because they added some local payment methods to it, and it works. Everything works just fine. I think that's all for today. My time has just left. So if you have any questions, I will be there for the whole day. So just ask me whatever you want. If you like extended version of this slide deck, you can send me an email to this address, or just give me your name card, and I will send you some more material on that. Thank you. Any questions?
Hello. My question is regarding some of the clients. Actually, they were using front end different language, and they were using back end as a Magento. Now the thing is, they wanted to they switched to Magento 2. Now earlier they were using Magento 1.9. Now switched to 2. They wanted that they have one technology, Magento 2, to handle everything store front end. Now if we bring this thing into their the storefront for their front end part, so will that be in terms of skill set for developers? What are the things we need to have, like the developer who is Magento developer they can do this, or they need to have a knowledge of this JS and front end also so that they can achieve it?
Mm-hmm. This is a good question. Basically, I see that you can convert both backend developers like Magento developers and front-end developers into JS developers, but they are coming from different angles. So basically, I mean that of course you need to have JavaScript developers in general. And the most natural way is to ask the backend guys to focus on some, JavaScript in general, like to be familiar with ECMAScript 2016 or TypeScript or this kind of stuff, to work on the business logic. I mean, business logic integrations, adding some endpoints, this kind of stuff. And then the front-end guys probably should focus on the Vue.js itself, like the framework, because it is all what powers up the front-end. So Vue.js and JavaScript, general knowledge about JavaScript is enough to work with. When we hire the developers to work on the project, we typically hire JavaScript developers or Magento backend developers transferred to the JavaScript from PHP.
One more thing. Let's suppose if we have lots of extension coming up in the backend for the website. Let's suppose we are implementing some normal extension which is like paid version. So for that extension, we have to set up everything for this storefront, is it, or we have to develop again for it?
Yeah, this is also pretty often asked questions, and will be also answered during the PWA panel, because the answer is not so. There is no simple answer to that, because no PWA solution, I mean Vue Storefront or PWA Studio, not support the extensions out of the box. Because you have to just switch on the front-end side, you have to switch to very different set of tools you are using. In PWA Studio, it's even you have to switch like the API to GraphQL probably at some point. In our case, we have totally different API, so also it is something you have to cover. So basically, the answer is if your extension works on the front end, you need to rewrite the UI. And you need to expose the API endpoints to provide the extension, the UI with the data. If your extension works solely on the backend, I mean, some product feed generator or some promotion rule or something like that, it's fine. You don't have to do anything. It will work just out of the box. So if your extension touch the front end, you have to rewrite the front end part.
Sorry, can I ask one more question about the front-end extensions, right? So I'm imagining that there will be a few competing products to yours, and the extension developers, they'll be probably very confused with which one to go to. I mean, ideally, I don't want to write anything. I want to buy an extension, it works, right? So how long do you think I have to wait until I see the winner that every extension is going to go with? Is it going to be 1 year, 2 years? What's your best estimate?
So I am hoping that there will be no winner. Like each of the solutions will have their own users. So this was a reason we started discussing with among those competing, let's say competing solutions. We started discussing about the kind of standardization of the API for extension developers. There is an organization called axdn.org, Extension Developer Network, and the guys from there are conducting this discussion, this working group, to create kind of standard. So when you will be developing extension for payment solution, for example, you will just provide Vue Storefront, PWA Studio, and probably other solutions with just single API or something like that. I'm not sure how it will be like, how it looks like in the end, because we are now discussing that. But this is a very important problem. So I think that there will be like single GraphQL schema or this kind of integration. And the front end should probably be dedicated to Vue.js or React, because otherwise it won't be so optimized. But yeah, that's how we proceed this problem.
Thank you. Thank you, Piotr.
Thank you.